And welcome back.
Hi.
Episode 33 of
The Horror Guys.
The Horror Guys. And each week we look at 4 or 5 horror movies and give you reviews, discuss them, and we got a few little surprises in there once in a while.
And we might have some spoilers, so if you want to see these movies fresh, you're warned that we might give away some points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we tell you all these spoilers, we should probably tell you what we watched so you can decide.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we saw the Universal Studios movie, The Invisible Agent, from 1942. Probably not the last, but it's the next in the Invisible Man series.
There's more Invisibles to come. Yeah. There are. Yeah.
I roll my eyes at Invisible Men.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Getting old. Hammer horror classic, X the Unknown from 1956, which is the secret Quatermass film.
It's not the Quatermass that never was.
Yeah, except it is.
Yeah.
The modern movie House of a Thousand Corpses from 2003, and the international feature Eyes Without a Face from 1960. So if you haven't seen those yet, you may want to tune out, come back after you've seen these, and see if you agree with what we thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, I kind of liked all of these. Well, Invisible Agent was kind of lame. The others were all good. I like the others.
I think we're kind of on the same page there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of movie talk, so let's get started.
Yeah.
Here we go.
We should
Wait,
start
before we talk
with
about
the
movies.
I'm kind of hungry. Aren't you hungry?
Yeah, whenever you gotta watch a movie, you gotta have movie snacks.
Product placement. Well, we saw this new snack is new to us, and we thought, why not talk about snacks you have during the movies? This is Twizzlers Filled Twists, orange cream.
I don't like orange cream anything.
And we're giving a live first taste of these, because neither of us have even tried these.
Must be movie night because we just spent $15 at the dollar store.
But you can get a lot of stuff for $15 at the dollar store.
Well, it smells good.
Smells orangey, creamy.
Oh, it's got stuff in the hole.
It's filled. It's creamy.
Like
filled.
Twizzlers are hollow. This has
It's like those ice cream.
goop in it.
It's like those ice cream bars with the orange coating on the outside and the white filling. And it tastes very similar, but at room temperature. These are good.
It's kind of disgusting and kind of fantastic at the same time.
No, just fantastic.
I like this.
Yeah. So that's Twizzlers orange cream filled twists candy.
We got ours at the dollar store. Mm-hmm. If we can find an Amazon link, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. No. I think I give this a thumbs up.
I'll give this a thumbs
big
up.
thumbs up. Yeah.
Probably beats that sugarless hard candy.
I was
bought.
skeptical because I'm not a real crazy about Twizzlers.
I've never had filled
either
Twizzlers before.
Black or red, but
The filling is kind of interesting.
these are good. Yeah.
Speaking of this was good, how about that Invisible Agent?
Yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd rather eat Twizzlers.
Well, they took a classic horror movie and kind of have a comedy sequel to it.
You mean the
It
Invisible
just
Woman?
seemed wrong.
You thought this was more comedy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was more adventure drama.
Yeah, sort of.
Well, before we get ahead of ourselves,
Wasn't horror.
Directed,
Wasn't horror, sure.
directed by Edwin L. Marin, written by Kurt Siodmak, same guy who wrote all the other Invisible things. Stars Ilona Massey, John Hall, and Peter Lorre. And the leading lady, the love interest, got top billing over the star, which might tell you something about the quality here.
Yeah.
1 hour, 21 minutes. Oh, and this is from 1942, if we didn't say that earlier.
Nice and sharp and clear and, good,
Really good looking
quality.
for black and white, yeah.
Yeah.
Stouffer and Akito, which is played by Cedric Hardwicke and Peter Lorre.
Which let's start right out by saying how ridiculous that was. Peter Lorre. Just being Peter Lorre, which is not a bad thing. And halfway through, I solidly realized, yeah, he's really Japanese.
He's wearing the little round stereotypical glasses.
But that's all.
And he's got kind of puffy, maybe kind of slanty eye.
He wasn't yellow-faced. He was just
He wasn't yellow-faced. He was just sort of
being
exaggerating
Lorre.
the eyes.
Well, he was acting, stereotypical a little bit, but...
Well, it's 1942. Japanese people in Hollywood were a little hard to come by.
I suppose.
Yeah.
But, Yeah.
Yellow face,
Yeah.
black face, 20 years playing teenagers.
But it
all
wasn't
gets to
even
Kevin.
it wasn't even Yellowface really. It was Peter Lorre, and not one of his. I mean, as far as performance, it was okay, but not one of his greatest roles. That's for sure. Anyway, carry on.
And the guy in the Werewolf of London was doing the yellow face, and you weren't that upset about him. Of course, he was the same guy that played Charlie Chan.
Yeah.
Sidney.
And I'm not saying
I can't think of
Yellowface
his
is a
name right
good
now.
thing, but
Well,
at least it was Yellowface.
in 1929,
it wasn't a white guy just being, look at
He
me.
was a white guy. He was Belgian.
Yeah, but he looked Asian. I mean, they made him up.
Okay, there was some makeup involved.
Yeah. You look at him and you thought, is that a white guy? You weren't sure. And it's like, Peter Lorre, it's a white
But
guy.
in 1929,
Like,
there was no reason they couldn't have found a real Japanese or a real Chinese guy to play that character. In
there was no
Werewolf of
excuse
London.
for that. Yeah.
You were not finding Japanese people in
At least
Hollywood in
at
42.
least they had a somewhat of an excuse. But they had some Asian. Some of the other henchmen were Asian. They could have had an Asian actor.
Yeah, they did. You're right.
Put a Chinese actor, and Americans are not going to know the difference between a Japanese and a Chinese person.
Well,
in
not in
1942.
those days.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, these
carry
two
on.
guys break.
That was a lot of exposition.
First line of the review here. Yeah. Stouffer and Akito go into Frank Raymond's print shop. They mention the name Frank Griffin, which is Frank's real name. Mm-hmm. He's the grandson of the original Invisible Man, which was 11 years ago, so we don't know the grandson thing. But they claim that they know that he still has the invisibility formula. Mm-hmm. He claims he doesn't have it, so they search the place. They threaten to cut his fingers off if he doesn't tell them where it is. But he distracts them and escapes. When Frank goes to the police, the U.S. government now wants the formula as well, but Frank refuses to give it to them.
And apparently they've known for a while that he's really Frank Griffin and probably has the formula.
Apparently this is a secret to no one.
Yeah.
World War II then breaks out, and he changes his mind, but only if he can be the invisible agent. Give you my secret if you let me be the boss.
And he's instantly qualified to be an agent.
The government debates this for all of 20 seconds.
Yeah, and then he's a paratrooper and a secret agent.
And he's a good paratrooper and secret agent.
All of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah.
Without any training, without any...
Well, I mean, you could be pretty good at it being invisible, but being invisible doesn't mean you know how to jump out of an airplane in the middle of the night.
All of a sudden, yeah.
Over enemy territory where they are shooting at you.
Mm-hmm.
So they send him straight to Berlin to learn all the secrets.
Mm-hmm.
He takes the formula, parachutes out of a plane over Berlin, and undresses on the way down.
Injects himself before he jumps on the plane and becomes invisible on the way down, which was a pretty good special effect.
Yeah.
He's taking his clothes off, and he's invisible. The clothes are leaving.
The Nazis see him come
underneath.
down, but they can only find an empty parachute.
Mm-hmm.
He then steals a Jeep and drives to Berlin. He meets up with his contact, an old coffin maker, who sends him across town to meet Maria, his real contact. Her boyfriend, Carl, from the High Command, shows up and treats Maria to dinner. And Frank, too, although he doesn't realize it at the time. Until the food starts disappearing. Where's your chicken, Carl? And he can't find it for some reason.
Well, and he's immediately sweet on her, and so he's given Carl a hard time, which you can do when you're invisible. And it's very, very comedic and kind of slapsticky as he's baffling Carl, with all the various champagne tricks and chicken and bones and
I saw the spy side of it. You saw the comedy side of it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, he brags about his conversation with Hitler, and the Fuhrer wants to attack the USA, and he's even set a date for the attack. Throughout the meal, food and drinks keep spilling on Carl mysteriously. Carl gets mad and leaves, and Frank puts on a robe and then covers his face in cold cream. He then passes out on her couch. Carl goes to see his boss, who turns out to be Stouffer, who we'd seen before. Mm-hmm. He tells about his strange dinner, and Stouffer doesn't seem all that surprised. Meanwhile, Maria wipes Frank's face clean and takes his clothes off, but he's still asleep.
And still invisible, so there's nothing to see, even though he's naked.
Presumably, she didn't take any liberties with this sleeping naked man in her room.
No, she wouldn't do that. No.
And if she did, we wouldn't see it. I didn't see nothing.
No.
Stouffer comes in and mentions that he's awaiting a secret file on the American invasion, telling this to Maria, alone in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Frank follows him out. It's clearly a setup since Stouffer knows about the invisibility. Stouffer confronts Frank in his office, and they start a fire, and the room fills with smoke, but we still can't see Frank.
Well, Frank starts the fire
Yeah.
to get away because he's locked in the room.
Frank grabs the book with the spies' identities and goes down the fireman's ladder. He gives the book to the Allies and then calls Maria again. Now, Baron Akita, Peter Lorre, the Japanese man, calls on Stouffer and wants his book back. Stouffer borrowed the book as bait for Frank, never intending to actually lose it.
But he did.
They are allies, but clearly not friends. Frank goes to see Carl and gives him a long speech about how evil the Nazis are. Carl tells Frank about the invasion plan for New York. It's tonight. Frank then knocks out the guards, and he and Carl leave the cell. Stouffer captures and tortures the old man who is Frank's contact in the spy network. Frank blames Maria, and sure enough, she screams as Baron Akita drops a net full of fishhooks over him. These are big old fishhooks.
Yeah.
She wasn't involved in the plan to capture him, but she was the bait.
But she was a willing pawn, an unwilling pawn.
Yeah.
She was the bait. Yeah.
Akita confronts Maria in the Japanese embassy, and this is the point where we figured out, oh yeah, he really is
he really
Japanese.
is supposed to be Japanese, yeah.
And Stouffer raids the... No accent or anything.
No, just,
And Peter Lorre's got his own kind of accent.
He was
himself.
He was being Peter Lorre, which is not a bad thing, but
this time
not
it was.
Japanese.
Stouffer raids the place. Frank steals Maria away. Baron Akita throws Stouffer across the room using karate and then stabs him to death. And Peter Lorre's like 3 feet tall, and Cedric Hardwicke's a full-size man, and he just wires for sure on this one. Akita then clears the room and commits...
It wasn't really him doing that?
Yeah, probably not. Akita then clears the room and commits seppuku, and we have no idea why.
That was kind of unclear.
Because that's what Japanese people do at the end of the movie.
I guess.
Prison guards catch up with Carl and kill him. No loose ends here. Frank and Maria then speed to the airport, where Maria steals a Nazi plane and flies them home. Once they take off, they circle around, and Frank bombs the planes on the runway.
The ones that are going to attack America.
Very ones that night, yes. As they approach England, Frank has passed out again, and the Brits shoot at them, so Maria grabs Frank and they parachute out. Eventually, Frank wakes up and explains that Maria really was one of their agents. He smiles and laughs, the invisibility is worn off, and he's normal again. The end.
Happily ever after.
Except somewhere down the line, Frank mentions that he only has a couple vials of invisibility formula left. He doesn't really know how to make it.
No.
So at some point, this stuff's going to run out, right?
Yeah, you'd think so.
And what about him going insane eventually when it wore off? Because it doesn't normally wear off.
I don't know.
They've changed the rules on this again,
they
haven't
did
they?
change the rules, yes. Yes, they did.
Consistency.
Yeah, inconsistency. Yeah.
The original Invisible Man and Invisible Man Returns were pure horror movies. The Invisible Woman was mostly a comedy, and this
that
one
wasn't related. The Invisible Woman was a different scientist and a different process, and
still Universal.
It was still, but
there are still connections, but yeah, that's not related to Griffin
the
or
Griffin,
anybody. Yeah.
the Griffin family. Yeah, yeah.
This one is sort of an adventure story. I didn't see as much humor in it as you did, but it was there. The special effects do continue to improve. There's a scene where he's in the bathtub and soaps himself up.
Oh, yeah, that was impressive.
And another where he puts on the makeup, and both look very realistic.
You know, just the suds.
Yeah, just the suds.
Yeah, that was neat. Yeah.
Cedric Hardwicke played Cobb, who was also the main villain in The Invisible Man Returns.
Once you get an actor you like.
Cobb, but in the same franchise?
Yeah, they do
That's
that.
like having two
they
different...
They did that, yeah.
That's like, yeah, well.
Yeah.
It seems odd that Universal would recast him in a different character in the very same series of films. It took a very long time to realize that Peter Lorre was playing Baron Akita, a Japanese man. How a Japanese man got the title Baron is never answered. You don't have barons in Japan.
No, not so much. Yeah.
Now that I think of it, there probably weren't a lot of genuine Japanese actors in 1942, so I guess this one can sort of be excused. There's no mention of Frank eventually going insane here, so somewhere down the line, the problem with that drug has been solved. Frank's speech to Carl is clearly anti-Nazi propaganda.
It certainly was.
And since this was released in the middle of the war, that was a priority. The story is not particularly interesting, but it looks like this was Universal's bid to help the war effort.
Made the Nazis look like buffoons.
It did.
Yeah.
There's no way that the bombers in Berlin could possibly have flown to New York City at all, much less that very night. So someone in the writer's room didn't do the math.
Yeah, they were small planes, 1942 technology, flying we looked up from Berlin to New York is
And
just
both
under,
those cities were specifically, explicitly mentioned.
Yeah, they were going to fly directly from Berlin to New York. That's just under 4,000 miles. And small planes max out at like 1,500.
Well, these were big bombers, but still,
They weren't
no.
that big, and a couple. Yeah, no.
If I remember right, it was a difficult thing flying over the English Channel to bomb Britain. United States was not an option.
Well, that was different issues. That wasn't that far.
Fair enough.
But distance-wise, I think there were other issues. But anyway, this was an absurd distance to expect in one continuous flight.
And overall, it's a weird blend of adventure, comedy, and deadly seriousness in parts. Best line of the movie. Stouffer says, "Sign this document that says we didn't harm you." He tells the old man that they tortured. The old man says, "I can't. You broke all my fingers." And this was one of the serious lines. This was not a joke.
It wasn't that serious. Yeah.
All right, well, what did you think?
I thought it was like a 3 or a 4. I didn't like it very much.
Yeah. Well, it's a 0 as far as horror goes. There's no horror here.
There wasn't a horror movie.
For what it was, I'd go with 4. It was probably okay at the time because it was all... we still see movies today where Nazis are the bad guys, and they're usually over-the-top villains. These guys were, like you said, buffoons.
Yes, they were.
And you got to take it from when it was made. It was made during the war. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you can excuse a lot of this because of that, as you couldn't do the same thing with Nazis today because we know too much about them. Mm-hmm. Back then, they were the mysterious enemy that we had to beat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like it. It was not good. Yeah. But I understand it a little better.
But yet it was included with the Universal...
The Shock Theater group,
Shock Theater group.
Yeah. Too many things in this group that are not really horror.
Yeah, they should have been more... Yeah, I'll see about that.
I guess it's hard to put out a package of horror if you've only got like 20 movies. Mm-hmm. Well, over the past month or so, we looked at the Quatermass films. We looked at The Quatermass Experiment, Quatermass 2, The Enemy from Space or something.
Mm-hmm. And Quatermass and the Pit.
Quatermass and the Pit, yes.
Mm-hmm. And then we saw the series, the Quatermass series, too.
We saw Quatermass 3, which was the 1979 miniseries. We haven't done a review on that one yet, officially.
It's really good.
I think the 1979 was 4-hour-long miniseries was the best of the Quatermass, period. Then we also saw the 2005 remake with...
actors.
Young guy. A bunch of young British people that you'll still remember. David Tennant was in it as one of the doctors, but he was not the main role. But he was not the main guy.
And Sherlock's brother in Sherlock.
Yeah.
That actor.
A lot of people you'll recognize.
I can't remember the name of the main guy.
But the thing
Quatermass.
Quatermass. It's got a J in
it. Okay. It was more... Well, they did it live. And
that was the neat thing about it. It was live.
That was neat. Knowing that they were on the air doing this live like a play. But the special effects were kind of low.
Jason Fleming,
yes.
Told you had a J in it.
He was Quatermass.
Yeah.
But
it was done live. It was all done in one take, live on TV. It was an hour-and-a-half movie. They moved from one scene to another with different characters. It was, for a live performance, it was very well done. Mm-hmm. Yeah. As far as the story goes, it was the same story as the 1955
but not
experiment.
Done as well.
We made fun of the rubber monster in 1955, but at least they had a monster. Mm-hmm. In 2005, it was all in your head because live.
Oh, it's incorporated itself into the walls of the building, and it's a big empty warehouse.
So he gives a big long speech to the wall.
So he's talking. He's literally talking to a big empty room.
Okay, but anyway, we did not do official reviews of those.
So anyway, here we are, X the Unknown.
X the Unknown, which is not even a Quatermass film, technically.
Quatermass.
No. Now you're being goofy.
Yes, I am.
X the Unknown from 1956, directed by Leslie Norman and Joseph Losey, written by Jimmy Sangster, and stars Dean Jagger, Edward Chapman, and Leo McKern, hour and 21 minutes. Now, this was written by Jimmy Sangster as Quatermass movie number 3, I believe. Maybe it was number 2.
But the problem was that he forgot to check with Nigel Neal,
Who was the creator of the character.
who wrote the others.
He said, no, that's
and he
mine.
said, no, I'm the writer of those, and you're not the writer of those. And he said, no.
So they
then
took the script, they saw all
changed
the
the
words
names.
where it said Quatermass, and put in
crossed those
Royston.
out and wrote in Dr. Adam Royston instead.
So have you ever seen, like, Star Trek with all the characters' names, fan fiction, where they've changed all the character names? It's this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was-
After seeing the others, it was like obvious.
Oh, it was obviously a Quatermass film. They just changed the guy's name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Soldiers are out practicing with their Geiger counters to find radioactive slugs for practice. The last soldier is out searching, and he finds some radiation that isn't supposed to be there.
And it's getting stronger, and the ground is starting to shake.
Of course, they're all just learning this stuff, so nobody believes him.
Yeah.
The mud starts to boil, and they all suddenly hear thunder. The ground opens up and eats the man.
Well, he falls in. It doesn't
Well.
really eat him, but yeah.
Dr. Adam Royston, Quatermass, is building a device, obviously made with an erector set, that moves tritium
Well,
samples.
some of it was literally.
Oh, very clearly,
the
yeah.
lab equipment.
Have you ever seen one of those metal erector sets from, I don't know,
from
they stopped making them in
1956?
the
Yeah,
80s, I think.
Yeah, they were on in 1956.
Yeah.
Yeah, it clearly was. Yeah,
Maybe that was futuristic then.
He's handling this super radioactive thing. He's standing behind a glass lead shield, and it's a little crane thing that goes across the ceiling, and a little arm comes down and opens a lid, grabs the sample, and brings it up and runs it across the room. And
Probably a completely legitimate device that somebody
Yeah.
made for the movie.
Oh yeah, and it
thought
worked.
it was just cool enough to use it.
and it was cool because it was a working prop. But yeah, erector set.
Erector set.
Yeah.
And this thing moves tritium samples around and may be able to neutralize radiation. And that's but he should be working on his lab, not working on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
His
Yeah.
boss then asks him to check out this thing that the army has run into, and he heads right over.
Strange radioactivity.
There's no radiation at all in the field where it was before,
But
but
they
some
have-
of the soldiers have radiation burns on
Yeah,
them.
I was just going to say, yeah, clearly radiation burns, so something's up.
Yeah, they bring out the big equipment to figure out what happened, and all that's left is a deep fissure in the ground.
Very deep.
2 young boys are playing in the nearby woods that night, and one boy, Willie, sees something horrible. He goes to the doctor in the morning and has radiation burns.
And I just want to throw in that I thought that was a really effective scene because we don't see the creature. Mm-hmm. It's just from the creature's point of view and seeing the kid react to the creature. And I thought that was really effectively done.
The other boy tells Royston where they went and where to go look. Royston checks out the old tower where the boy was injured, and he finds an old man cooking with a still. He finds the old man has a radiation bottle that should have been in his own lab, and it turns out his lab was broken into earlier that very evening.
And the bottle is empty, and all the radioactive
The thing that he
stuff
was
is
picking
gone.
up with the erector set was fully
Yeah.
radiation.
So deadly that it would kill you, within minutes if you pick it up.
And
Completely.
the old man just picks it up, and he's like
completely
drinking out of it.
Yeah,
yeah.
and Royston's freaking
No,
out. Like,
no.
no, don't touch that. And it's, like, it's completely inert.
Yeah. All the radiation from the tritium bottle has vanished.
Mm-hmm.
The door and the windows of the lab were barred, so how could anyone get in there? What happened to the not radioactive bottle?
Yeah, it's all smashed. The lab's all smashed up, but everything was still locked.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did this happen?
Inspector McGill from the police shows up to investigate the break-in. He wants to work with Royston to solve the mystery. Meanwhile, the little boy Willie dies.
Mm-hmm.
The radiation room in the hospital starts activating on its own, and the technician sees it.
Oh, X-ray. It was an X-ray machine.
Well, they just called it radiation room in the hospital, but yeah, it was an X-ray machine.
Yeah, and the X-ray, the radioactive source. Yeah, the power
It
source.
melts the radiation tech like a wax figure.
Yeah, which was a kind of neat effect.
It was a wax figure, but still.
Well, yeah. But
They soon find that someone has stolen all the radium from the machine. Something is obviously stealing radiation sources. Royston suggests that the mysterious creature can assume any form at once and says that it came in through the air vent in liquid form. He's right, but that's kind of a big jump.
Well, he's kind of just,
He's like the monster expert.
He's a very smart guy, and he's looking at what possibilities there are, and he doesn't say, doesn't present it as this is what happened. He said, well, this is my idea, and if you got a better one, jump in and correct me. And nobody really does.
And at this point, we haven't seen the monster yet.
No.
One of the guards at the field where this all started is killed that night. The other guard shoots the unknown creature a bunch of times before he's killed as well.
Yeah, bullets don't
Could
have
it
any
be coming
effect.
out of that fissure? It could.
And going back to it at night.
Royston-
After it feeds. Yeah.
Royston believes an intelligent species from the center of the Earth has evolved alongside humanity. But since their world is collapsing from geologic pressure, because, the Earth is getting heavier.
Yeah, over millions of years, it's gotten compressed, and these creatures or thing has been trapped underground all this time, and it finally worked its way up.
It's had enough.
Yeah.
But since our world is collapsing from geologic pressure,
Wants
they're being
food.
forced to the surface now.
It's run out of radioactive goodies downstairs, so it's nice concentrated sources that it's homing in on up at the surface. Yum yums.
Radiation monster gotta eat.
Yum yums, yeah.
Royston wants someone to go down in that fissure and look around. Peter, one of Royston's assistants, goes way down deep in the hole, and the skeleton finds one of the skeletons of the soldiers that was on guard duty earlier.
Way down in the hole.
The Geiger counter suddenly goes crazy, and it comes after him. They
That
pull
was-
him up, and he explains what he saw.
Really good. It was a good scene.
Yeah, you thought it was gonna get
Tense,
him.
and yeah, you
And
thought
it
it was. Yeah.
The military then decides to fill in the hole with concrete. Problem solved.
And Royston saying, well,
Dug out of the center of the earth. 5 feet of concrete's
5
not
feet
going to stop it.
concrete's not going to matter much. And,
Royston asks, how do you kill mud? That's all this is radioactive mud.
yeah, basically it's cohesive. Yeah, mud over millions of years has become intelligent. Yeah.
Royston is working on a beam that will neutralize radioactivity. Sure enough, the creature breaks out of the concrete with no effort at all. Royston and Peter are removing the nuclear core from their reactor, and the monster shows up after killing 4 more people in a car.
Oh, they figure out he looks at a map, and there's straight lines from the radioactive sources back to the fissure, and they look and what's the strongest radiation in this immediate area, and they find this big old reactor, which is a ways away, but strong, and so they're in the process of taking the core, trying to move the core further away when it comes out and heads beeline for them. And
It attacks the base, steals their cobalt, and escapes.
pretty good special effects,
But
too.
they all get a good look at it. Yep.
Blob.
Yeah, the Blob.
The Blob, yeah, before the Blob. Or was it after the Blob?
The movie The Blob came out the
Blob.
following year.
Okay, yeah.
These guys may have heard about that and stole the idea, or maybe the Blob borrowed from this. It's very, very similar, very, very close together.
The Blob ate meat. This eats radioactivity and kills people if they get in the way. But it's not
The effect is the same.
It's not primarily after people.
It's a blob.
But it likes the radioactivity. Yeah.
They evacuate the area in the creature's path back to the fissure. This time, though, the creature takes a different path, which confuses everyone. They now believe it's heading for a full nuclear power station, which will plunge the country into darkness. Meanwhile, Royston has perfected his device to neutralize the radiation, but while testing it, the sample explodes. Little tiny sample, great big explosion.
Yeah.
What is this giant house-sized monster going to blow up into?
Size of the grain of sand, and it blows up the room.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're afraid what could go
And-
wrong?
Like, well, maybe it was just out of sync, and they're like, okay, well, we got to try it. Like, they realize they don't have much choice. They got to try it.
They think it was simply the scanners being misaligned, and that it probably won't happen again.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
They bring a giant set of scanners to the fissure and wait for the creature. They
Set a
lure it
booby
out of the
trap.
hole and turn on the scanners.
Booby trap.
Will it work? Will it explode and kill all of England? No, it just dies.
It dies. Yeah. Happy ending.
This was clearly written to take advantage of the Cold War's fear of radiation, which was a very common theme in the 50s. There's not much else to be fearful of here. There is some resemblance to The Blob, which came out the following year, in color no less. The version we saw was extremely sharp, obviously a restored edition, but still black and white. This was written to be the next Quatermass movie. Yeah, we've already been through all this. It went right onto the script. There were no changes other than the name. It had the same tone and mood as the other films, even though it's completely unofficial as a Quatermass movie. So if you see the list of Quatermasses, this may or may not be on it, depending on who wrote the list.
Yeah. All in all, I think I give it a solid 7. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it, yeah. Black and white takes away, but it was a
Well,
nice, it was a
little
good
bit.
looking black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did we see?
So I'd give that one a solid middle of the Quatermasses,
Yeah.
if you want to even throw it in there.
Yeah. I think we should.
Did we see a short film?
We did see a short film.
Yeah.
Just a short time ago.
Called Mom Away from 2019. Directed by Marcus Horton and Josh McClain. Written by Marcus Horton. Starring Annie Vinci, Carl Grasso, and Jace Kelly. Link in the show notes. It's about 4 minutes.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, I didn't catch it exactly,
Yeah,
but
just
it's
under
short.
4. Mm-hmm.
Mom's making the bed, and the phone rings. While she's talking to her husband, she hears a noise in the next room, but there's nothing there. Her husband calls, and he'll be home in about 20 minutes.
Not fast
He
enough.
wants to break in some of the new furniture they bought in their new house.
Wink,
wink,
wink, nudge,
Uh-huh,
nudge.
yeah.
If you know what I mean.
There's a flickering light in the hallway, which, how often is that a good sign?
It's never a good sign in these movies.
She hears a scrabbling noise in the next room. Could there be something in one of the moving boxes? Yep.
Yeah, turns out there is.
Inside
Yeah.
the box is a photo of a creepy guy standing in a field. Remember the one we did the other day? They had the creepy guy on the TV screen?
Mm-hmm. Made me think of that a little
What
bit.
happened with the creepy guy on the TV screen?
He disappeared off the TV screen and suddenly he was in the room.
Guess what happens here?
He disappears out of the photo and suddenly he's in the room.
A common theme. Did you like it?
I did. Well, yes and no.
Again, it doesn't really have a story
that's-
to it. It's just a scene. This thing in the picture kills her.
That's the fundamental problem I'm having with so many of these shorts.
Well, a lot of
There-
these shorts we
there-
watch are like 4 minutes long, too. They're
there
really
is-
not way to have much of a
There
story.
is a limit to how much story you can cram into 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think it was well. It looked
scene,
good. It
yeah.
was
Oh,
well
yeah.
photographed, well paced.
Well acted, good special effects, good sound.
The sound effects were not annoying. The visuals were
Mm-hmm.
not too dark. A lot of my common complaints are darkness and noise. And
And poorly made and poor acting and
Yeah,
things
this
like
was
that.
not
No,
that. This was all
had,
good.
This had all those things were all thumbs up.
a worthy 4 minutes
Yes.
with a predictable story.
Yeah. Yeah.
The creature was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of kind of cool, we watched last week. What did we watch? The Devil's Rejects from 2005. Mm-hmm. And I think I liked it more than you did.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yes,
was.
you did.
I think the bottom line here was brutal, but had some funny moments. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we both mentioned that we hadn't seen House of a Thousand Corpses.
I had never seen
The
that.
Devil's Rejects was the sequel to The House of a Thousand Corpses, so we watched them in the backwards order.
Yeah. So this week was House of a Thousand Corpses.
We liked Devil's Rejects enough, we decided we had to fit in the Thousand Corpses. From 2003, directed by Rob Zombie, written by Rob Zombie, stars Sid Haig, Karen Black, and Bill Moseley, hour and 29 minutes. Mm-hmm. So this was made 2 years before The Devil's Rejects.
Yeah.
Takes place in 1977. We'll get into the date a little more later. Overall, did you like it?
Yes. I liked it better.
Better than the second one.
Yes. I was vaguely disappointed by the second one. And after seeing the first one, I was even more disappointed by the second one. The first one is like a tall, cold, rich, thick glass of Hershey's chocolate milk, with the real syrup and lots of the real syrup and a glass of whole milk. And the second one was like a glass of Yoo-hoo. It's not bad.
I should tell Rob Zombie his
it's-
movie's like a glass of
But
Yoo-hoo.
but it's thin and watery in comparison.
Okay.
That's the best simile I can come up with. I liked the first one so much more. It had all the carnival-y madhouse goodness that I was expecting, and a lot more Captain.
It was a lot more of a standard horror movie.
A lot more Captain Spaulding being Captain Spaulding, and I liked it. Liked
Okay.
it. Yeah, I would give this one a solid thumbs up, and the second one, yeah.
This had a lot of stuff in it that didn't make sense, wasn't necessary, and kind of got on
just
the way.
was kind of
also.
awesome. No, that was kind of awesome. Yeah.
Well, we start out with an introduction from Dr. Wolfenstein, our horror host. And this little bit by Dr. Wolfenstein. We see him a couple times glancing on screens here and there, and it goes absolutely nowhere.
No, but it's like one of the late night horror movie hosts guys.
But this is supposed to be real. It's not a horror movie.
Yeah, but it is.
This is followed by a TV commercial for Captain Spaulding's Museum of Monsters and Madness. And the subtitles tell us that this takes place on
Madman.
October.
Madman. Isn't it?
Madmen?
Or is it Madness?
I don't know. I think Madness.
Oh, okay. Oops.
Subtitles tell us that this takes place October 30th, 1977, the day before Halloween. The scene opens with Spaulding and Michael J. Pollard, little guy. He always plays these little nerdy guys. I don't know what the character's name was here. Talking about a guy who got a Dr. Zaius doll stuck up his butt. See, you're still laughing.
Yes.
Suddenly, two robbers break in. One of the robbers says he hates clowns, and Spaulding gets angry. The little guy then recognizes one of the robbers and starts making fun of him. He's like 4 feet tall, and the robber's like 6 feet tall, 300 pounds, carrying a shotgun and a monster mask. And he's like, "You stink." Another guy then jumps in the door and kills both the robbers.
Madman.
It is Madman.
Yeah, it is Madman. Yeah.
Okay, then.
Museum of Monsters and Madmen. With the coolest neon sign out front that says that.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, it looks like the coolest roadside attraction ever. It's a museum of horror and real killers and real weird things and freaks and
True crime.
fake freaks and all kinds of oddities, and it just looks really cool. I want to visit that, except for the murder part.
So another guy comes in and then kills the robbers. Spaulding then laments, "They got blood all over my best clown suit." And the credits roll. Two couples then stop for gas at Captain Spaulding's place. Spaulding is still mopping up blood as the group goes in and enjoys the museum. They all get to go on the murder ride, hosted by Spaulding. And this is like a little roller coaster thing with him standing in front in his top hat giving the speeches. Well, this guy in the back
It's not
pushes.
motorized.
It pushes
it's
the
it's on a
coaster
track
through.
where you, like a ride you go through, and there are animatronic displays of various murder scenes. And
Yeah, it's like sort of a manual thrill ride.
and he's just awesome narrating each scene as it goes through.
They pass active displays of cannibals mixed with hokey funhouse shows. They have a great time in the show. One of the stories is about a local guy named Dr. Satan, a guy who experimented on mental patients until vigilantes came and hung him from a tree. And then the next day, Dr. Satan's body vanished. There's a news report then, flashes on the screen for no particular reason, about 5 cheerleaders who recently disappeared. A lot of things just flash on the screen here and there. Just
Lots of flashes and-
sometimes
yeah.
it relates to the story, sometimes it doesn't. One of the guys wants to see the tree where Dr. Satan was hanged, so Spaulding draws him a map. They stop and pick up a hitchhiker on the road, and they offer to drive her home, and she says she'll show him to the Dr. Satan tree, but on the way, someone shoots out their tire. They think it's a blowout, but we see the guy with the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Between more coherent scenes, we get flashes of news reports of missing people, interspersed with Baby the hitchhiker, posing with knives, clips of old monster movies, which we identified as they popped on the screen,
Yeah, we recognized him.
and occasional phrases by the horror host Wolfenstein. We then cut to Otis, who's giving a wackadoodle speech to the tied-up cheerleaders. And he's a little on the crazy side with the speech.
But they're fun about. They're having fun with. It's a fun crazy.
He's
That's what I
having
like.
fun.
That's what I liked about this.
Yeah.
They're insane, but they're having a good time, and they've got a sense of style. It's it's a kind of a carnival fun atmosphere.
Crazy,
like
murderous,
a real,
insane,
like a
loony
real
family,
fun
but at
house.
least they're fun.
They're living in a fun house.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
They all wind up at Baby's house, and they get to meet her mother. She invites him to dinner, where they also meet Tiny, a huge disfigured man who wears a mask. He can't hear much and wears a mask because his father went crazy and set Tiny on fire. They all have to wear masks at dinner, and it's a truly awkward meal. One of the best scenes of the movie.
Weirdest dinner party ever.
Otis then joins them and brings in a pickled baby in a jar. "I brought the baby, Mom."
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, little baby."
And she kisses the bottle.
Kissing the jar. Apparently, it was one of her unsuccessful. Died very young, small enough to
Very
fit in
young.
a jar, and pickled.
Suddenly, here's
Ew.
where it gets weird.
Oh yeah, just now it's getting weird. Yeah.
Suddenly, dinner is over, and Grandpa does a complete stand-up comedy routine, complete with stage, microphone, and amplifier.
And that's what I mean about the.
And he's
fun, I
like,
think.
"All right, that's enough. Dinner is over." And then he
And
gets up and does
it's
the
time for
comedy
entertainment, and it's a literal stage with stage lighting, and Mama's running a spotlight in the back.
act. And his comedy act is then followed by Baby, who does a sexy lip-syncing dance.
To Marilyn Monroe.
One of the girls gets jealous and starts a fight, but just before things get carried away, RJ, the mechanic, bursts in to say their car is repaired. They all get in the car eagerly, but they never even make it to the front gate
No,
before they're
get
attacked
away.
by Otis and Tiny.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning, it's October 31st, Halloween. They show flashbacks where the family cut up Bill, one of the teenagers, with a straight razor and an axe. They also show us that they pose his body as a kind of merman display. You know, I'd seen the picture of the merman on memes on Reddit before and didn't know what it was from. Now we do.
No, yep, from that, yeah.
Sheriff Wydell comes looking for the kids. This is the brother of the other Wydell. And they talk to Spaulding.
Who's wearing a Pigs is Beautiful
Pigs
t-shirt.
is beautiful, yeah. He tells them the young folks were there and gave them a map to the Satan tree, which is all the truth. The sheriff goes out to the tree, and sure enough, they find the car abandoned and vandalized. And in the truck is one of the missing cheerleaders, dead and mutilated. They head to the Firefly Ranch, the closest house. The deputy finds the cheerleaders in the barn and radios the sheriff, just as Mother Firefly shoots the sheriff in the head. Otis does the same with the deputy and also with the victim's father. Otis cuts off the old man's face and skin and wears it as he torments the man's daughter, asking, "Who's your daddy?"
Yeah.
And he was.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
The whole group of prisoners, all dressed up as Easter bunnies, goes out to Dr. Satan's grave.
Yeah, you heard that right. They make them put on Easter Bunny outfits.
Yeah.
No, the one guy was Eeyore. The girls were bunnies. He was Eeyore.
I thought they all just had big floppy ears.
No, he was Eeyore.
I didn't catch that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of humor here, like Otis yelling, "They all run, like scared rabbits," as the girl dressed in a rabbit suit runs through the woods. Baby catches up to her and stabs her to death repeatedly. The last two victims are dropped into a coffin and lowered into what looks like a mine shaft. Ghosts, or maybe crazy people, rise up out of the mud and attack the coffin, releasing the girl. The guy who with her is dead at this point.
I don't think it was ghosts.
I don't think it was either.
No,
it's not
it was
really that kind of
it was
movie.
underground, freakish underground dwellers.
Yeah. It looked like
People-
ghosts or something.
People
but
living
that's
in
doesn't
people
really fit.
living in these tunnels and rooms down there.
Yeah. And she
Rob,
runs into
Rob
still
Zombie
more.
doesn't do supernatural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She runs into still more crazies who strip off her rabbit costume, but they leave her alone. She explores the crypt she's in and sees that the walls are lined with dozens or maybe hundreds of mummified bodies.
See, it's like a real live fun house. It was.
She's not having fun.
It was, yeah, but exactly. I mean, like a Halloween haunt. It was exactly like a corridor you'd walk down in a Halloween haunt. Only it was
Somebody
real.
went to way too many of these haunted houses. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd think somebody used to work in them and stuff too. Yeah.
She passes through room after room of freaks and eventually realizes that this is Dr. Satan's workshop. He's still alive and working on people down there. A creature wearing a gas mask comes at her with an axe, but accidentally breaks down the door instead. He's really clumsy.
Yeah,
in that
he's
gas
kind of a
mask.
clumsy guy. Yeah.
There's a brief chase where the girl and the baddie eventually get buried in rubble. The next morning, the girl wakes up and climbs out of the crypt. She makes it to the road where she is rescued by Captain Spaulding.
Thank goodness.
She passes out in relief at being rescued.
Except Otis is in the back seat.
Obviously, Spaulding is in on everything, which we did not really know until this point.
We didn't officially know. I
We
mean,
saw
we
the
knew
sequel, so we
we
knew
knew
it,
it, but yeah, because of the sequel. But yeah,
It could have been a big twist, I suppose, there at the end if we hadn't already known it.
yeah.
Not that big of a secret.
So anyway, this is violent and horrifying and funny and brilliant, and I loved it.
There are a lot of flashes to grainy, oversaturated, and out-of-focus cuts to various scenes. Sometimes with characters we know, sometimes just for the sake of weirdness. This is interesting, but gets distracting quickly. It most likely was done to make poor special effects stand out less. Kevin asked me 10 minutes before the end what the final girl's name was, and I couldn't tell you.
I wasn't paying
We
attention to the
looked it
character
up.
names,
We looked it up, and it was Denise.
and it didn't matter.
This is one of those films where there's literally no characterization. It's just one reaction after another as things are thrown at these people on screen. And what did you just say? It didn't even matter who their names were.
Pretty much, yeah.
Not really. I know one of them was Jerry, one of them was Bill, and the girls I didn't even catch.
Denise and somebody.
Yeah, the other one, yeah.
Yeah.
We saw this after The Devil's Rejects, and I was surprised that there were so many characters from this one that didn't appear in the sequel. I expected a lot of the bad guys to get killed in this one because they weren't in the second one. No, that didn't really happen.
Yeah, not so much.
It would have been nice to see more of those characters, Grandpa or RJ or more of Tiny in the sequel. I realized Tiny was somewhat limited in The Devil's Rejects because the actor had died.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
that Kind of hard to get him in there.
Yeah, a little bit.
This had a fairly straightforward plot line, some really good funny moments, and seemed to hit all the normal horror tropes on the checklist, while the sequel seemed to mostly just go for brutal and only had a little bit of humor to it. Although I still like the chicken scene.
The chicken scene, yes, that's a good one.
As a standalone film, a lot of it doesn't make sense. Paired with the sequel, it's a lot more coherent, but the two films are wildly unbalanced in quality. I'd still recommend them both, but there are definitely some issues here.
Hershey's chocolate milk and Yoo-hoo.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll go with it.
Yep, that's the difference. They're both good. One's kind of thin and watery.
Somebody should tell
I should write
that his
I
movie
should
was
write to
thin
Rob
and
Zombie
watery.
with that review of those two movies. I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sure he's heard worse.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So, we had an international film this week.
We did. It was French. It was called Eyes Without a Face from
Oui, oui.
1960.
1960. Directed by Georges Franju.
Who never considered the film to be a horror story, but instead felt it was a tale of anguish, he says.
I would call it a horror story.
I would call it a horror story. Yeah, but he didn't.
Written by Jean Redon and Pierre Boulou. Stars Pierre Brasseur, Alida Valli, and Juliette Maniel. 1 hour, 30 minutes. Amazon link in the show notes for our affiliate link to pick this one up. Black and white.
And you should.
Black and white and subtitled. I would suggest, I don't know if there's a dubbed version of this, but get the subtitles.
Go with the subtitles. Yeah, it's worth it. Yeah.
Music in this is kind of interesting, too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
A woman is...
And beware of, there's a U.S. edited version, and that was titled, for some reason, The Horror Chamber of Dr. Faustus, and there is no Dr. Faustus in the movie.
No.
It was a weird... They had a weird thing with the censors and the
There's an operating room, but I wouldn't really
censors
call
and
it a
stuff,
horror chamber
yeah.
either.
But there's a U.S. version that's all chopped up, I guess, and probably has that title.
Get the real French one.
Get the original French in French with subtitles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A woman is driving alone late at night. There's someone asleep in the back seat, and the woman seems nervous. She parks next to a raging river. She gets out, drags the body down to the water, and throws it in the river.
Wasn't asleep.
He wasn't asleep.
Yeah.
Professor how do you even say that? Genesier? Genesier?
Genesier.
French people.
Yeah, I think it was Genesier.
Professor Genesier is giving a speech about tissue transplant. It requires too much radiation, and that kills the patient, so that doesn't work real well.
Yeah, he's having a trouble with rejection. He's theorizing on how to make it work.
So in their new attempts, they're going to rely on exsanguination, drain them of blood. He's clearly an expert on transplantation. He gets a phone call from the morgue, and someone mentions that he hasn't been the same since his daughter went missing. He needs to go identify the body. The detectives think the girl found in the river might be his daughter. Her face is missing, and the professor's daughter is known to have lost hers in an accident not too long ago, so the descriptions match.
And at that point, I was feeling, in a good way, it almost felt like the story had started without us, and we were trying to catch up.
Yeah. What's going on here?
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, it was very skillfully done, I thought.
Only the eyes on this body are intact. Still, it looks like someone surgically removed this girl's face, so it might not be her.
Yeah, it
this
wasn't
is too clean.
Yeah, very almost like with a scalpel.
Yeah.
The detective says. Yeah.
The professor arrives, and the professor says it's her, Christiane. There's another father waiting, Mr. Tassoul, who also thought the body was his daughter's.
Nope, it's Christiane. Yep,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yep.
The professor is certain it's Christiane, so they don't let the other man see the body. And we're starting to figure at this point there's something funky going on here.
Something's off.
Yeah, probably is the other guy's daughter for some reason. So the professor looks dazed and lost at the funeral. Christiane's fiancé, Jacques, is there.
And the professor's assistant.
A foreigner named Louise.
Who we saw at the beginning of the movie dumping a body in the river.
I didn't recognize her at this point.
Oh,
yeah,
I did.
It was,
Yeah. She was the lady driving the car at the beginning.
The assistant, who is the same woman we saw dumping the body in the river, seems very upset when the professor starts putting flowers on the grave. They drive home to a huge house in the country where he parks in the garage.
Nice house.
Very nice.
Pretty.
Parks in the garage next to the same car we saw the woman driving in the opening. That's when I connected them.
Yeah.
We hear a bunch of dogs barking in the distance. He goes upstairs and starts talking to Christiane, who is not actually dead, but has found and read her own obituary. She's pouting in her room next to the caged birds.
Lying face down with her face turned away from the, so we don't see her face. No.
It seems that the secretary jumped to the body. It becomes clear at this point that the secretary dumped the body in the river at the professor's bequest to make it look like his daughter had died, so they'll stop searching for her. Mm-hmm. Christiane has a horribly disfigured face and always keeps it turned away from the camera. Her father, the professor, caused the disfigurement in a car crash where he was driving like a maniac. Was he drunk? Just angry?
I think just driving like a maniac.
He also killed the other girl to do a face transplant with his daughter, but it didn't really work.
Yeah,
Finally,
we
see her face. She lifts up from the couch.
And...
We see it's a thick plastic mask. And we'll have a picture in the show notes to take a look at that one. Mm-hmm. It's a nice mask. It looks good.
Yeah.
She wanders around her gilded prison of a palace. She can't leave, but she has the freedom to wander around the house. She calls Jacques her fiancé, but can't talk to him. She has become a secret. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Louise, the secretary, is out in town.
Thinks she's dead.
Is out in town scouting for more girls. She finds a young student, Edna, and tells her she's found a room to rent. They get into her car and drive to the estate, which Edna knows she can't possibly rent. Something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
She hears the dogs barking and is afraid, but has no choice but to go inside with Louise. The professor plays along with the rent-a-room story for a while, and then he chloroforms the girl.
Does this rag smell like chloroform?
Yeah.
Knocks her out quick.
They carry the girl down to a secret lab behind the garage with a secret door and the works. Clearly it's a secret lab because it's got a secret door.
And it's a full operating room.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the biggest scoop light you've ever seen over the operating room.
Oh, yeah. It's got some good lighting.
That was cool. A vintage 1960s technology. It was pretty cool.
Christiane watches all of this from a distance. This time the professor is going to remove the entire face all at once, not in sections like before. He's learning as he goes, and he's improving.
Yeah.
Christiane goes into the lab and looks around. She goes behind the lab and finds dozens of large dogs in cages. They're trapped just like she is. Mm-hmm. Caged birds, caged dogs, caged girls. The metaphors are getting deep here. Mm-hmm. She takes the mask off and goes to see the new face, still on the donor. Edna wakes up, sees the scarred face, which we finally get to see.
And I was a little disappointed. I was slightly
It was a little
disappointed.
out of focus and blurry.
It was a little out of focus and blurry, but no, I was hoping that we would not ever get to see her.
I think they could have gotten away with that.
Yeah, I think they should have maybe.
It's a little Phantom of the Opera-ish.
I kind of felt like that was a weak point.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have shown her.
Shouldn't have shown her, and if they did show her, they could have done a little better.
Yeah.
She sees the scarred face and screams. We finally get a look, too, and yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Clearly, Christiane is not against what her father is doing, as she doesn't make any attempt to help the girl. Later, they all go to the lab, and the transplant procedure begins. The scene is a little slow, but it looks like serious surgery. The effects here are very good, possibly enhanced by the black and white film. Mm-hmm. When they remove the girl's face, it's a super creepy and well-executed shot.
Yeah,
Probably the highlight of the movie.
Cut all around and cut around the eyes and kind of pry it off.
And I had not seen this movie before, but the scene where they took her face off, I have seen that before.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't seen that before. It was good for 1960, especially. Yeah.
For a time before CGI, it was very realistic and very creative.
Not CGI. Yeah.
Yeah, you peel somebody's face off today, it's all computerized.
Yeah.
They took some time with this effect.
Yeah.
A man brings in an abandoned dog to the professor. Why does the professor collect stray dogs? He uses them for surgery practice.
Yeah, for a while we couldn't figure out why. He's just
so many
just
dogs.
Like the sound of barking. No, they're surgery experiments. Yeah.
Louise comes in and mentions that the surgery is healing well. Edna, the kidnapped girl, is eating and alive. She knocks Louise over the head and runs out.
Face all bandaged up, but
yeah,
apparently they intend on not. I mean, they didn't kill the first girl on purpose, and I guess they intend on somehow.
They don't know what they're
going to
do at this
free.
Point. It's vague.
Yeah, she's not dead, but she has no face, so
She knocks Louise over the head and runs out, attempting an escape. She runs up the stairs to Christiane's room, and she jumps out the window to her death. Mm-hmm. Whether she fell or jumped, we're not quite clear on that.
I think it was a suicide.
Okay.
Yeah.
They take her body to the cemetery and put it in the crypt next to Christiane's corpse.
Perfect place to hide a body in the cemetery. Yeah.
Edna's friend reports her disappearance to the police. She tells about seeing the woman with the thick pearl necklace, which we know Louise wears to cover up a scar on her neck.
And that's a thing. Are you going to mention that later, too? Why she's so indebted to the professor?
Why is she so indebted to the professor?
Because he saved her face. He didn't, replace her face, but she was horrifically scarred and damaged, and he did a miraculous surgery.
And she pulls up the beads.
She's got a little bit of scars on her neck that she keeps
Yeah.
covered all the time with a thick row of pearls.
Not something that would permanently disfigure her, I wouldn't think, but it'd probably be an ugly scar.
Oh, the scar down there was, yeah. But something about
He'd
her
done
face
something
was,
to save her.
Yeah, and so she owes him, and she's in deep and gets, yeah.
The police look at her photo and realize the two missing girls look a lot alike. Could there be a pattern? We jump forward in time and see the professor, Louise, and Christiane sitting at dinner. The girl's face looks healthy, real, and normal.
Yep, not wearing a mask.
Now, they say, it's time to get her a new identity. She starts wondering about Jacques, her former fiancé. The professor looks a little nervous after examining her. He admits to Louise that he's failed. We get a time-lapse collage
He
of her
knows
new
just
face
looking
rotting
at her.
off.
Yeah.
Her body has rejected the skin over the next few weeks. She calls Jacques and says his name aloud over the phone. Jacques.
Yeah.
And he recognizes the voice.
And then he goes to the police, and then the police get another step closer to the professor, putting things together.
Christiane gets depressed and asks Louise to kill her. To
It's-
get one of those
they're-
injections her father uses on the dogs when the surgery goes wrong.
Oh, yeah. They're smart police, but it's a really thin case to go on, and
Yeah.
so they can't quite put it together.
Jacques goes to the police and tells them he recognized Christiane's voice on the phone. He hears about the pearl choker and immediately suspects Louise, telling the police that she always wears one. The police call in a girl, Paulette, who looks similar to the missing girls, and they want her to be bait in a trap. The professor performs a few medical tests on her, which are all negative, and she goes home from the hospital.
Yeah, she fakes having
Migraines.
migraines, so she gets into the professor's clinic. So the professor meets her, but as far as the police see, it doesn't come to anything.
Yeah.
But-
Sure enough, on the walk home, Louise offers Paulette a lift.
Yeah.
Next thing we see is Pauline on the operating table. The police knock on the door and come asking for the professor as he prepares surgery. The doctor answers their questions, and they leave completely satisfied. Meanwhile, Paulette wakes up. Christiane cuts her loose and stabs Louise right in the pearl necklace.
Symbolic there. Yeah.
Christiane then lets all the dogs out of their cages. The dogs come across the professor outside, and they all pile on and kill the professor. They tear him apart.
The professor who has hurt them and abused them and neglected them. And now it's revenge of the doggies.
She then lets all the birds out of their cages, and they're a little less vicious.
Yeah.
She then walks off into the woods.
Dancing around with the birds.
Yeah.
They're all kind of fluttering
Everybody
around.
is free.
Yeah. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. That's the ending that I see there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Life gives you a rubber face, go live in the woods. The photography is very sharp, and it all looks really good for being black and white. Then again, this is 1960. Things had progressed a long time. Black and white ought to look good.
Well, I think by this time...
It was a choice.
Yeah, it was a choice, and it was an artistic choice to have it in black and white.
The music alternates from fun and whimsical to creepy and dangerous, and it's perfect for this film. Christiane's mask looks like something out of an old Twilight Zone episode. It's very doll-like and rigid, but it also looks very good.
Yeah, it must have been prosthetics and makeup. Well, it mentions that in the trivia.
Yeah.
That it's suspected, but there doesn't seem to be a firm answer on that.
I would say it's probably a rubber mask with like adhesive and makeup around the edges to make it stick
And then
tighter.
when she's holding the mask, it's
That's
a
plastic,
plastic, hard plastic shell. But when she's got it on, it's definitely conforming with her face and moving with her face, kind of. So,
Yeah. A couple times she talks and you can see the mouth kind of moving.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
She's very doll-like. Again, the black and white probably makes it look creepier than color would.
Yeah.
So again, it's
I think it was
accented by the black
definitely
and
a
white.
good choice to have it black and white.
The dog mauling scene was predictable but surprisingly graphic. There are a lot of similarities to the Skin I Live In that we reviewed from 2011.
A little bit, yeah.
This has a lot
Yeah.
less action and gore, but it's a much more coherent film. That one was trying to do all kinds of things, and it didn't do it well.
Yeah. This
This
does
is
it better.
Moody, stylish, the suspense continues to build, and the payoff is worthwhile. I definitely recommend it, especially to someone who may be looking to appreciate black and white films, but finds the old ones boring.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like black and white because they say, oh, that's so boring.
This wasn't boring.
This isn't boring.
No,
And
it
it's a
was
very high
fascinating.
quality black and white. So,
yeah.
if you don't like black and white, give this a try. You may like it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's our show.
It is our show.
We got something new this week. Buymeacoffee.com/horrorguys. We like coffee.
I love coffee.
Patreon. Some people don't like Patreon. So there's another option to send us a little, buy us a coffee. Buymeacoffee.com/horrorguys. We'll have a link in the show notes. And video people, look down here. I'll put it on screen. Get ready for next week, because we'll be watching the Universal Studio flick, The Ghost of Frankenstein from 1942. The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957.
Looks like a Frankenstein kind of week.
And the new movie The Hole in the Ground from 2019.
I've heard good things about that one.
And Climax, international feature from 2018. Also, we're going to forego our weekly short and talk about the independent feature, Between the Darkness, also called Come Said the Night. This is going to be released on the 20th of this month, so it's a pre-release.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
We
seeing
are
that.
ahead of the game this
We
time.
are, yeah.
Give those a watch this week and see if your opinion matches ours.
I don't know if they'll be able to see that indie one.
Probably not.
Yeah.
HorrorGuys.com, Patreon.com/HorrorGuys, or Buymeacoffee.com/HorrorGuys. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.